So today is the 9th of October, am I right? And we're doing the 6th chapter. We're at the part where Arjun begins his analysis. Is that right?
What about the first, what we have missed? Because today we were doing an introduction.
This one. What you have missed when we start a new Bhagavad Gita overview, probably at that time you can cover, and from 4th chapter onwards I have recordings, so that you can take from the office. So 4th, 5th and the 6th chapter you can cover up just hearing. So this Bhagavad Gita overview that we do on Tuesdays has a different format. We have something called acronyms for each chapter. That's right. Can we revise all the acronyms? Usually we revise the acronyms at the end of every chapter. So probably when we begin the 7th chapter, we'll actually revise the 6th, because this last time in JSD, when we finished Journey of Self-Discovery, we were talking about how this Bhagavad Gita is like a sandwich. Do you remember this analogy? There's a bread in a sandwich which is below, and then there's one at the top, and what is in the center is of very much importance, because that is a stuffing. Cheese sandwich makes it a cheese stuffing, with a cheese stuffing. Vegetable means it's a vegetable stuffing, right? So it's the stuffing which is important. So the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, if you divide it into 6, 6 and 6, that makes it 18. The first 6 is like the top bread, all the options that Krishna presents to Arjun. The below 6 are how to practically apply, a little bit more information about the 3 modes of material nature, little bit about Prakriti, little bit about, the 3 types of divine and demoniac nature. Yeah, and the middle 6 chapters is of much importance, because that is where the Bhakti Yoga is presented by Krishna to Arjun, right? So the between 6 chapters is what we're going to start next week onwards. Right now we're going to finish the 6th chapter, at least we're targeting to finish today. Let's see. So we can turn to 6.33. We were going to revise all the acronyms. Chapter 1 acronym is, does anyone remember? DOUBT. Chapter 2 acronym is a summary of the Gita. So the acronym is Gita. Chapter 3 is tree. Am I right? Chapter 4 is years. Chapter 5 is step. And chapter 6 is what we are doing right now. It's easy. EASY. And what is this? It's an acronym for something. Each chapter is broken up into parts, sections. There are particular themes Krishna relates to Arjun, right? So the acronym for chapter 6 is easy, and we're breaking it up now. E stands for the first 9 verses where Krishna presents the nature of the mind, enemy or friend. The first 9 verses of this chapter. A stands for what this chapter is all about. Ashtanga Yoga. Major chunk of the shlokas belong to this category, 10 to 36. S is success and failure. This again begins with Arjuna's question, what we'll be doing this time. 37 to 45. And Y stands for Yogi, which has 2 verses only, 46 and the 47th verse, which is the last verse of this chapter. Is that okay? First 9 verses, we did enemy or friend. There Krishna revealed the nature of the mind. If the mind is a friend, when is the mind a friend? When it is controlled. When the mind is uncontrolled, it's the greatest enemy. Imagine having your enemy constantly spoiling all your plans for successful life. Very frustrating. That is what an uncontrolled mind does. After revealing 1 to 9, then Krishna talks about how to control this mind the way people would do it in Satyug, with the tools of meditation. That is what Ashtanga Yoga is all about. We saw 8 steps in Ashtanga. Ashta means 8. Ashta Anga. Anga is like limbs or parts. Yeah? So we have Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pratyahar, Dhyan, Dharan. The first is Dharan, then is Dhyan, and then there is, I forgot Pranayam in between. Yam, Niyam, Asan, then there is Pranayam, then there is Pratyahar, then there is Dhyan, then there is Dharan. Final is Samadhi, where you get the darshan of the Paramatma in the heart. So in the last verse, a few of the last verses that we've been doing, Krishna says that one who realizes that Paramatma and me, means Krishna himself is that Paramatma who's in everyone's, residing in everyone's heart. In Journey of Self-Discovery, we saw how Shirodakshai Vishnu, he's got 2 functions to perform. One is that he enters material atoms, maintaining material atoms and also keeping them together. Right? In atomic science, we learn that how every atom is, the nucleus is very active. That's what an atomic bomb is, when you split up the nucleus. Right? So it's very active. So that activity is because of the presence of Shirodakshai Vishnu. And the magnetic field between 2 atoms is also caused by Shirodakshai Vishnu. And the second which Vishnu performs, this Shirodakshai Vishnu performs, is that he is in the Paramatma in everyone's heart. A witness, a well-wishing friend, as he says in the last verse of 5th chapter. Do you remember? We did that Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, Suridam Sarva Bhutanam, Jnatva Mam Shanti Mrichati. One who realizes that I am the well-wishing friend. Right? So this is how Krishna is placing himself everywhere. So this is Ashtanga Yoga. We've ended Ashtanga Yoga almost till the end. This Ashtanga Yoga I broke into 4 parts. Do you remember? The first part, Krishna was explaining. What is that? What was the first part? I have it in my notes. Yeah, the internal and the external parts. Basically the technicalities of how to sit, how to practically perform this thing, which place you have to select, should not be too high, not be too low, you have to sit on a kusha grass and there should be a cotton cloth on it and only deer skin, all those technicalities, little bit, your head, your neck and your body should be in a straight line, and then how to drill the respiratory system, all those technicalities was the first part of this Ashtanga Yoga. The second part he says, when do you know you attain perfection? Then the third part he says that when you realize that Paramatma, that supreme person is whom I have to meditate on, that is the perfection of Ashtanga Yoga. When you reach the Paramatma, when you've got darshan of the pure Paramatma, that is the perfection of Ashtanga Yoga. Now we have 3 more verses left in this section. I think 4. 33, 34, 35 and 36 is what we're going to cover today, because that is very important. It is Arjun's analysis of this Ashtanga Yoga. So we'll be continuing the 4th part of Ashtanga Yoga, verses 33 to 36. That is Arjun's analysis.
Rajiv got doubt and got that.
But we didn't finish. We didn't finish. Yeah. We just wrote down a part of it where how this Ashtanga Yoga is impractical for Kali Yuga. We had 4 points in that, where we studied, Yeah. I thought we included, so I took it away from you. Arjuna's analysis, we did 4 points on how this Ashtanga Yoga is impractical for Kali Yuga. Can anyone have 1 point? Do you remember 1 point?
Short life.
The best point one, short duration of life. To perform this Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, each one of these steps take years and years to perfect. Forget about completing the entire procedure until Samadhi. In Satya Yuga, people would live for 1 lakh years. That was like their minimum age. That was the lifespan for Satyug, for people in Satyug. So they could actually practically practice this procedure. The example in Shastra given is of Vishwamitra Muni. He practiced tapasya for 10,000 years. Yam, niyam and dharan and all these things, he did it. And then there was kind of trouble in between. Indra was nervous. Indra thought that, maybe this person will become a great tapasvi and he'll usurp my position of being chief of demigods. So out of this insecurity, he sends a beautiful Menka, an Apsara, a demigoddess. He sends a heavenly damsel. Prabhupada writes it society girl. In Bhagavatam he writes a society girl. He sends her to kind of deviate and distract Vishwamitra Muni. And it's quite funny that, it's not funny. It is quite sad that Vishwamitra Muni actually got disturbed just with her ankle bells. He didn't even see her. She didn't say anything. She was just walking, just with the tinkling of ankle bells. That is the power of the lust which is sitting inside our heart. That is when I was doing Journey of Self-Discovery, I remember how Bhakti Yoga is important because it purges the anarthas in our heart. That is the cause of our sinful inclination, which is very difficult. You have to reach a very high stage of Ashtanga Yoga to purify that particular tendency in us. Illusion, pride, anger, greed, they're like mountains of each one of these personalities sitting in our heart, dictating us. And when the mind starts listening to the Paramatma, then these things become purified. These 6 anarthas become purified. So Arjuna's analysis, 4 points. One is short duration, so it takes a long time. Second point, 5,000 years back, Arjuna rejected this yoga. He had much more facilities to perform this Ashtanga Yoga. And he rejected it because he found it very impractical. Because one of the perfectional stages of Ashtanga Yoga, Krishna had mentioned, is that you have to see everyone equally. Whether a friend, whether a dog, whether a cow, whether an enemy, everyone has to be seen on an equal level. Now Arjuna is not just a student which is yours and he's like, okay fine, we have this theory we had in school, we hear this way and then we take it out from this way. Arjuna was not that kind of student. He was very sincere. Whatever he got from Krishna, he wanted to immediately apply. So he thought equal vision. That means Yudhishthir and Duryodhan, I have to watch with equal vision. That is so much more difficult. How do I do this? It's not practical. Mere se hoga hi nahi. How do I reach that particular position? So finally, he rejects this Ashtanga Yoga. There are 2 more points which I just can't find right now.
Seriousness is not there.
Yeah, in Kali Yuga, the seriousness that you require, even to sit straight is such a trouble for 2-3 minutes. Even if you're sitting in a class, it's like you're adjusting continuously. Even I'm standing here moving around. You can't sit straight. What to practice Ashtanga Yoga, where for years and years we have to sit in that same position without eating. That's another.
I'm just going to ask you without eating.
Yeah. Right? So it's very difficult for an ordinary man to leave the house, go to a secluded place. Lot of trouble. Plus the fear in the forest. How will we meditate? Right? But someone comes to ask your visa only. So then it's great trouble in this. So 6.33, I'm reading the translation and then we'll move ahead. Did we read this shloka?
Yeah, we read it.
Can we read the translation together, all of us? Arjuna said, is everyone there?
Yeah.
6.33, chapter 6, verse number 33. Translation is what we're doing. Shobha, you go. Start. Arjuna said, O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. So here he is making it very clear that my mind is restless and unsteady. Now he defines the mind more in verse number 34, which also we read last time. We'll do the translation again together. Start. The mind is restless. Start together. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. So what are the adjectives he's using for mind? Number 1, restless. You agree?
Yes.
Totally. Turbulent.
Yes.
That takes you for a ride. Obstinate.
Yes.
Obstinate is like, very stubborn. In British English they say rascal. A rascal is a stubborn fool. Understand? Rascal, actually if you see in US language, it's like a big, it's quite an abusive word, but actually in British English it means a stubborn fool. That means knows what is right and still won't do it. That is obstinacy. That's obstinate and very strong, O Krishna. To subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. Now Arjun, he's talking about the wind. It's not that he's talking in Hava. He's not talking in the wind. He's actually practically saying that it's easier for me to control the wind. Because in those times they would have weapons of all 5 elements. Sound, earth, water, fire, air, ether, everything. All these weaponry systems were very strong at that time. So actually Arjun had these, advanced weaponry where he could bring about tornadoes in the battlefield and whisk away, punches of thousands of soldiers off their feet. So that was Arjun's prowess. He could control the wind. He could bring about a tornado. And he says, still to control the mind is difficult for me. So you can imagine for us. I remember someone was mentioning, maybe one person will be able to do. I think Varsha said it. She was sitting. She said, "Ek ko to karne hoga na." I said, "Oh, it's okay, Yuga Dharma means everyone should be able to follow it." I'm reading from the purport. The mind is so strong and obstinate, and it sometimes overcomes the intelligence, although the mind is supposed to be subservient to the intelligence. Yeah? So here Prabhupada is writing, it's something from about the chariot of the body. Do you remember the chariot of the body? Shall I draw a dirty picture for you? 5 horses? These dots are horses. These are senses. The rope is like the reins, that's the mind. The dots are the horses, because I don't know how to draw a horse. And then there is a driver. The reins, the rope is in the hand of the driver. And there is a passenger. That's what the chariot is all about. You require a passenger.
Not bad. Not bad. Quite good.
No wheels. It's in the wind. Right? So this is the driver. Now the rope is supposed to be in the hands of the driver. Correct? And what is happening? The senses are so restless, this mind is so restless that it takes over the driver and goes wherever it wants, and the driver is not able to control the chariot. It's like a man with 5 wives. What happened? Utsav, what happened? You can tell us.
Poor guy.
Poor fellow. Correct? Even with one is poor fellow. Imagine with 5. Correct? So what happens? One wants to go here, one wants to go for a movie, one wants to go for shopping. Now pulling him in all 5 directions. So this is the halat of the driver. With the mind empowering the senses to go in 5 different directions, the chariot falls off a cliff. Right? There's absolutely no sense of direction. So here Krishna is asking us to control that mind who is so strong. So in the chariot of the body we understand what is the position of intelligence, what is the position, or at least what is supposed to be the position of intelligence, and what's supposed to be the position of the mind. Right? And now here Prabhupada gives a nice analogy. He says sometimes when an infection is very acute, it even surpasses the efficacy of medicine. And sometimes even if you give some immunization, but sometimes if the infection is extremely acute, if the medicine doesn't work, even the bacteria still, the virus still spreads on. So same way Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says if intelligence is sometimes compared to a sharp needle, a sharp needle can penetrate very well, and it cannot penetrate through iron. So the mind is like iron. It becomes so jad, it becomes so stubborn, so obstinate, that even it becomes like iron. And if intelligence even is as sharp as a needle, it is not able to penetrate, not able to tame the mind. So it's difficult. So those are like the adjectives which Arjun is using. He's saying pramati. Pramati means what? Can you read the word-to-word translation? Pramati is agitated. Balavat is strong, extremely forceful. Dridam, obstinate, extremely stubborn. Right? Now, so how do we control the mind? The thing is that in Kali Yuga, it's actually made very easy by the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Mantra means what? Does anyone know what mantra means? Chant, yeah. I'm saying a Sanskrit wise mantra.
Man must be the mind.
Yeah, man is the mind. This word mantra is actually a
Weapon to control. Vastra. No.
so this man and this tra becomes mantra. It's actually a summation of two words. Man iti thrayate. To control the mind. Mantra means to control the mind. So in Kali Yuga, as it is presented in Kali Santhal and Upanishad, there's a dialogue, there's a conversation between Brahma and Narad Muni. When Narad Muni says that Kali Yuga is so difficult, sinful things are more available than spiritual options. The sinful options are so much more. How do we pass this time without getting contaminated? Right? So then Brahma gives him this medicine. What does he say? Iti shodashaka nam kali kalmashanashanam. I think there is one inside. Nataha parataro upay sarva vedeshu drishyate. So Brahma says to his son Narad Muni, he says that sarva vedeshu, if you search the entire Vedas, kali kalmashanashana. What is kalmash? Kalmash is like impurities. The impurities of Kali are lots. And to nash, to destroy that kalmash of Kali, what is applicable? Is only the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Iti Shodashaka. Shodashaka is 16. These 16 syllables. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Remember, no? Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. It's the only savior. And that is actually very easy to control the mind. Imagine if we had to meditate like they do in Satyu. Finished. Everyone becomes disqualified. Right? And if we had to perform those Vedic sacrifices, the way it was mentioned in, I think the first disqualification would be burnt houses, you know. It's so elaborate, the ingredients required, the kind of yajnas required. The houses are not as big as palatial rooms. So yajna is also disqualified. Deity worship. With this busy household, people have to work for like 10-12 hours. That's less, no? Compared to what we are today, the 21st century, people are working for 12 and 14 hours. They're traveling so much more. Sometimes working over weekends also. How can it be possible for every person, every living entity, every human being to perform deity worship? Very difficult. That's why, ISKCON has temples. And we don't set up a temple unless we don't have a batch of regular congregation. Because it's a serious thing. It's not that, I wake up at 7, so I wake up the deities at 7:30. Or I wake up at 5, so I wake up the deities at 5:30. When you have installed deities, when you have pran pratishtha deities, it has to be very systematic. So when after there's a particular regular congregation, only then we have these deities like Radha Krishna deities are like the highest. At least we have Gaurnitai or Gopalji, who is a little more easier than Radha Krishna deities. So it's a lot of regulation. That's why the Lord has made it very simple for us. He said, so Brahma and Narad Muni, they're having a conversation. Immediately the next conversation, the next dialogue which Narad Muni says in this Upanishad is that, so what are the rules and regulations for chanting this Mahamantra? Because for everything you need some rules and regulations. For yajna you need some, even if somebody puts their finger in their mouth by mistake, you have to take a bath and start the yajna again. It's that strict. It's contamination, it's saliva. So what are the rules and regulations for chanting? Brahma says there's absolutely no rules and regulations. That is Kali Yuga. The highest is available in the worst of times. When you have a shop, say a sari shop if you have, and your goods are not selling, what do you announce? 25% discount, a sale. That doesn't mean all sales means it's not selling. 25% sale, and still if it's not selling, 50%, they go to 75%. In Kali Yuga, Krishna has to give 110% sale. I'll give you, I'm begging you, chant. That is because the times of Kali Yuga has become so difficult. Krishna wants us to practice this thing, so He's made it super easy for us. It's just a mantra which we can chant anywhere, and it's a Maha Mantra. It is so purifying, extremely powerful than any other mantra available in the entire Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. That's what Lord Brahma says. So we'll go to the next one, 6.35. Because in this point, Arjun is asking a very practical question. He says that you want me to control the mind. If I have to control, then what is the means? How do I do it? 6.35. What are the means to control the mind? In first two verses of an analysis, he says it's very difficult, next to impossible. Then he says, even if you want me to do it, tell me what is the means to do it. 6.35, I'll read, you all will repeat. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena cha griyate. Yeah? So here about 3 points we have in the shloka that we need to see. Number 1, he says asamshay, he agrees. Asamshay means without, undoubtedly, without doubt. It's true. He says it's very difficult, I agree. I'm not saying it's a piece of halwa. That's what Krishna is saying, that I agree. He is acknowledging Arjun's feelings, that I understand it is difficult. Can we read the translation? Start. Lord Sri Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind. But it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. Right. So here he is giving two means. Number 1, he says asamshayam mahabaho mano durnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena chagriyate. So number 1 is abhyas. What's abhyas? Practice. It takes practice. It's not just going to come one fine day. Right? Any material endeavor that you have to make, you require practice. Yes, right from cooking to practicing some sports, studying. It requires constant practice. Only then you can practice makes one perfect. So abhyas, Krishna says it's possible by abhyas, and some amount of vairagya is very important. He says. Detachment is a factor of life. Do you agree? At some point of time we have to be detached. We have to leave our school bag so that we enter college. We have to leave our college bag so that we enter the next part of our life. Finally, children. We have to give up so many things for children. And then once children grow up, again you keep giving up things, whether voluntary or involuntary. So detachment is something which we have to practice at all points of time. Whether forceful, if it's forceful, that means it's more painful. When we accept things and we learn to move on and be more flexible in life, what happens? It's easier. It's more smoother life. So abhyas and vairagya. Krishna says mind control becomes easy because what is the function of the mind? At one point of time it will like something and just the next minute it will reject it. You seen this thing? Possible, this happens all the time with the mind. At one point of time this object or this person whom you liked so much, the very next day you just hate it. That's the function of the mind. Sometimes we call it immaturity, sometimes we call it all these things, but basically these are the functions: like, dislike, hate, love. All these things are functions of the mind. It doesn't discriminate. Discrimination is a function of intelligence. To like these dual roles which are played, these mood swings, all these things are functions of the mind. So Krishna says by practice and by detachment, it is definitely possible to control the mind. So Krishna is continuing his instructions in the next thing. So here one more thing, now in the purport, Prabhupada, he gives a very practical tip for detachment. How do you get detached? What makes detachment easier? I don't know, is there a shloka in the purport? No, no? Parishano bhav, it was written there. Yeah. What makes this particular detachment more easy is Shravanam. You know what is Shravanam?
Listening.
Shravan karna, giving your ears. Hearing. When you keep hearing about detachment, when you keep hearing about the Lord, when you keep hearing Krishna Katha, you realize how these spiritual things are actually eternal and how these material things are simply temporary and giving me misery. When you keep hearing this thing, sometimes they say that even a person speaks lies like 20 times, it sounds almost like truth. That's the power of hearing. That is actually the first thing, which is the sense out of all the sense organs, all the 5 senses of sense of touch, sense of smell, sense of hearing, sense of smelling and sense of taste. Out of all these 5 senses, hearing is the first thing to be activated when the child is within the womb. Yes. And apparently it's the last thing to be deactivated. एक तो lid भी नहीं है. You can't stop listening. There was one dacoit who was very famous, and he was old and he was passing out, and that time he was passing his legacy to his child, to his son. And you know what instructions he gave him? He said, कुछ भी होना, and he was saying कि आपकी आखिरी इच्छा क्या है, father? He was saying कि you continue my legacy and you should be, even famous Daku than me, and you should police को मजा चखाना and whatever the melodrama he was giving. And one important instruction he gave him, he said, whatever happens, वैष्णवों का कभी कथा मत सुनना. Never hear anything about Krishna. Never hear anything from a Vaishnava. Bhagavad कथा होता है ना, never hear it. Very strange. Fine, I will never hear it, my father. And one day what happens is, he apparently gets a big, he attacks a palace of a king, and he was just about to, he took the crown. He was thinking, if I get this now, then I'll never have to work in my life, ever. Because the quality of the crown was like really high class. When he was just about to leave it, he got so nervous, and I'm stealing from the king. I had it if I'm caught. In that nervousness, he drops it. Because of the noise, the king wakes up, everyone wakes up, and this person tries to escape. And when he's escaping, when he's running, he runs really fast. He was practice. So he runs really fast, and when he was running, he crosses over a river, but still the soldiers are following, and then he has to pass through a village to get to his, den where he can be really protected. Now to pass this village, there was a Bhagavad Sapta going on over there. He's thinking, abhi main kaise jaun yahan se? That's the only last wish of my father ki kabhi nahi Bhagavad Katha kabhi nahi sunna, Vaishnava or Krishna Katha kabhi nahi sunna. He said, what should I do now? So what does he do? He does this and he runs. And what happens? A thorn pricks his feet. Now what to do? Now you can't. You have to take it out from your hand. What does he do? Somehow covers one ear, and even in that meantime, whatever he hears, it's a long story, even little bit that he hears immediately, affects him. So then he realizes, now I know why my father said, never hear. Hearing is an extremely powerful tool. This ears, that's why God has not given us. गलती से तो at least सुन ले, so उद्धार हो जाएगा, right? So this hearing is extremely important for detachment, and practice is what is required. Now in this shloka, if you see, Krishna is addressing Arjun with 2 names. Number 1 is Mahabaho. Can you see that? What is the meaning of Mahabahu? Mighty armed. And the second name is Kaunteya. Kaunteya is
Kunti's son.
Yeah, so now, actually Arjun is so nervous. He's thinking, how will I control this mind? So Krishna says, don't worry, You're the child of my own aunt. You're my cousin, so I'll help you. So he calls him, very affectionately calls him Kaunteya, hinting him that I will definitely help you in controlling your mind. Yeah. Why does he call him Mahabaho? Why strong arm? What's mind got to do with strong arm? To boost his ego, morale. At one point of time where 13 years they had to go out of Hastinapur, of Indraprasth, and at that time what happens is around the 8th or the 10th year, Arjuna went to the heavenly planets. He was on his en route to heavenly planets, and Krishna had particularly asked him to get the Pashupati Astra from Lord Shiva. So on his way to Lord Shiva's abode, what happens is he meets a hunter, and this hunter attacks him. And that time they have a big, really strong duel, and Arjuna was wondering that a simple, ordinary hunter cannot be so strong. It's not possible, because he was giving him real tough fight. And the kind of weaponry this hunter had, it's not possible for a hunter to have such weaponry. It's just simple bows and arrows. So at that time Arjuna understood this has to be a special personality, but he gave him a very tough fight, almost kind of defeating this personality. And at that time this hunter reveals himself to be Lord Shiva. And he comes forth and he tells Arjuna that you're very powerful. So Lord Shiva is like the greatest of warriors. And the fact is, there is one greater warrior than Lord Shiva. Do you know who that is? That's our mind. So Krishna says that you almost defeated Lord Shiva, you have Mahabaho. But this title will be actually fitting you if you will even be able to conquer that warrior mind. Then this title fits you. And also I am able to help you since you are very dear to me. You are a son of Kunti, my own aunt. So I will definitely help you. So the crest jewel of all warriors is the mind. Compared to the mind, Lord Shiva is still 6.36. Krishna further is trying to boost Arjun. Asamyatatmana yogo Asamyatatmana yogo Dushprapa iti me matihi Vashyatmana tu yatata Shakyo vaptum upayatah. Together? Start. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and strives by appropriate means is assured of success. Right. So he is saying that you have to be serious about this thing, about mind control. Not that one day you didn't practice, that means practicing at a regulation. Is this clear? Mahabaho, mighty armed, and son of Queen Kunti.
Why does he end it with that is my opinion?
Where does he end? Because Arjun has put forth very forcefully this thing that mind, it cannot be controlled. And Krishna is saying that's my opinion, that by practice and by regulated endeavor, it is possible. And the thing is here, Krishna never forces Arjun, if you say. At every point of time, he is giving his opinion. That's his function as a Paramatma. He never forces. He will probably just advise us what to do. The free will is always with us, whether we want to follow, we don't want to follow. So here he says, to practice the process seriously, that is practice. What is the Abhyas part here? And what is the Vairagya part here? What practice that you do, it has to be done seriously, regulation. And the Vairagya part, Krishna says, so in this shloka, Krishna is continuing his instructions to Arjuna on controlling the mind. trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in material enjoyment is like trying to ignite a fire while pouring water on it. I'm practicing at the same time I'm attached to so many material things. What happens? I'm trying to ignite fire and at the same time pouring water. The whole process is going to take so long and simply wasting my time. So Krishna says both these things have to go hand in hand. Serious practice along with some amount of detachment. Where does detachment begin? That these desires, these material desires which are extremely unfavorable for the growth of my soul, for the soul to come back to its original consciousness, what is favorable and what is unfavorable I need to understand. There are some endeavors which will make me go closer to Krishna, and there are certain things in my life which pulls me away from Krishna. So these unfavorable things is what I have to give up. And number one, it starts with desire. Because when we desire, that's how that whole chain reaction begins. The minute we desire, the Paramatma has heard it. And then, desire is like a subtle prayer. The minute we desire, I wish. It's like a subtle prayer. Something that we've wished for, something that we've asked for. And being a best friend, Paramatma tries to fulfill that. So when we give up these unfavorable desires, when we ask that Krishna, I only want to come closer to you, then Krishna will try to fulfill that particular desires. Those are favorable desires. So what I have to give up is actually just the unfavorable desires. And I have to practice what is given to me more seriously. So when we actively try this practice, when we chant, there's so much facility on the phone, you can hear lectures on your phone. We give this in our office. We have so many lectures because hearing, I told you, is important for detachment. When you keep hearing, so that's when it's actively possible. That's our active, participation in this. And then slowly everything takes. In any form of yoga, if you see Gyan Yoga or Karma Yoga, even Dhyan Yoga, this Abhyas and Vairagya is always required, not only in Bhakti. Just that in Bhakti it becomes a little natural because you're attracted to Krishna slowly. So can we start the next part? Is that okay? The last portion, the second last portion of this chapter.
Why does he say that for the one whose mind is unruled?
Means he's not focused. For even for material endeavors, you have to focus. You need to be focused.
That your mind is unfocused.
No, he's trying to tell Arjun that how it becomes easy.
Easy.
When you're focused that this is my goal, then it's more easy to take it. Success and failure. So we have to read shlokas from 37 to 45. That's how we do. We read all the shlokas along with translation and then come back for elaboration. Verse number 37, please repeat. Arjuna uvacha Ayati shraddhayopeto Yoga chalitamanasah Aprapya yoga samsiddhim Kamgatim Krishna gacchati. Now Arjuna is asking a question. Arjuna said together, O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist, who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness, and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism. And Krishna says if someone actually, Arjuna is saying someone actually tries to do it and doesn't finish in this lifetime, then what happens? 38, either he was lazy not to finish it, but he did something, and there's another person who couldn't finish because his lifetime ended. 38, start. Kachinno bhaya vibhrashtash Chinna bhramiva nashyati अप्रतिष्ठो महाबाहो विमूढ़ो ब्रह्मणपथि. He is making his question more clear now. Together. O mighty armed Krishna, there is not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence, fall away from both spiritual and material success, and perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere. 39th. एतन्मे संशयं कृष्ण छेतुमर्हस्य शेषतः त्वदन्य संशयस्यास्य चेता न युपपद्यते. Translation. This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, there is none to be found who can destroy this doubt. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Parthanaiveha namutra विनाशस्त्य विद्यते न हि कल्याणकृत् कश्चित् दुर्गतिं तात गच्छति. Together, start. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Son of Pritha, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never calmed by evil. 41st. प्राप पुण्य कृताम लोकान उषित्वा शाश्वती समाः शुचिनां श्रीमतां गेहे योगभ्रष्टो विजायते. Translation. Start.
The unsuccessful yogi, after many years of enjoyment on the planets of the highest living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. अथवा योगिनामेव कुले भवति धीमताम् एतद्धि दुर्लभतरम् लोके जन्म यदिश्रितम् idrisham. Sorry. Together, start. Or, if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly, such a birth is rare in this world. So you see, there are two categories: a person who after short practice has stopped, and someone after long practice has stopped. Someone who's practiced with short practice, or someone who's lost with short practice, will be born in a rich family or in a pious family. And someone who's who was unsuccessful after a long practice of yoga takes birth in a family of transcendentalists. That means they are already practicing Krishna consciousness for a long time, and such a birth is very rare. 43. Tatra tam buddhi samyogam labhate porvadehikam yatate cha tato bhuyah samsiddhau kuru nandana. Translation. On making such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success. O son of
You can get my beads, small beads, chanting beads, small chanting beads.
There's very less. I need about 10 more. Yeah. Thank you. So in taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success. 44. पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव ह्रियते ह्यवशोऽपि सः जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते. Translation. By virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles, even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. 45th. Prayatnanyatamaanastu yogi samshuddha kilbishah aneka janma samsiddhas tato yati param gatim. Translation. And when the yogi engages himself with sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed of all contaminations, then ultimately achieving perfection after many births of practice, he attains the supreme goal. So 6.37 to 45. Yeah. So now, after understanding the formidability of the obstacles in this Ashtanga Yoga, and after hearing the entire procedure, Arjun says, what if a person who's not like a cheater, but genuinely, sincerely, he's trying, and he dies before attaining this samadhi, before attaining this perfection, since his mind deviated him, then what happens, Krishna? So in this part, hearing about this difficult process, it triggers Arjun to ask another question. He says, imagine if you've done so much mehnat, you've done yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar, so much. All 8 steps should be finished, or is it okay if a person is able to reach till 4? Then what? Someone's trying to complete their PhD. Last few, parts of the thesis was left and this person stopped. Then what happens? Do they get a degree? Can they continue? What is the process? So what happens if one takes to this yogic process with faith, but then falls away without perfecting his spiritual consciousness? Arjun is worried that the unsuccessful spiritualist is left in a no man's land. Because here materially he's gone to a secluded place, so materially he is finished, socially he is dead, and here even in spiritual endeavor he is unsuccessful. So what is that? Dhobika? Does he become like that? So simultaneously his opportunities for worldly pleasure is anyway gone, and plus here also spiritually is not perfect. So our spiritual journey is actually carries on for a lot of lifetimes. Every individual person is having his own spiritual evolution. In this particular life we've learned so much, and then we move on, and then we move on. Suppose spiritually I'm not able to fulfill. Now material endeavor, of course, someone works very hard as a big industry. If he dies, does he continue? Can he inherit the same industry? Imagine, baby comes and says, that this is first of all we don't remember, and even if he remembers, can someone sign off that same property to him? No, his material endeavors are zero. It finishes with death. He cannot pack and take a luggage. There was this whole story where there was this particular king, and he was living a very lavish lifestyle. He had a beautiful queen, he had whatever he wanted, and then he was just whiling away his time. And at that time, at least in the Vedic times, there used to be this Raja Rishi. Any king would be called a Raja Rishi. What's a Raja Rishi? Raja is a king, Rishi is a
saint. They would be called Rajarshis. Rajarshis. They would be saintly kings. Not just anyone would not be allowed to be a king. Someone has to be very saintly. So this person was not like that. He was very much materially inclined, not so much spiritual inclination. And then the subjects then follow the same pattern. They don't follow any spirituality in their lives. So the saints who were there in the kingdom, they were very worried about the future of this king. That maybe tomorrow, what if he goes to hell? Or what if he doesn't, ends up in a very ordinary life than what he is now. He's coming from such a nice lineage where his past people have been so much more saintly. What about this king? So this particular person, this king, he used to do a lot of charity, and that was basically show off. And he would do this thing, and to one saintly person who was very genuine, and he said that, I want to give you this particular charity. He said, I don't want anything from you. What you have to do is, I'm giving you this, it's a golden staff, a gold staff which this saint gives. He presents it to the king, and he says that you have to find the most foolish person in your kingdom and give this staff to that person. And how does this staff pass on? When that foolish person finds another real foolish person more than him, he has to pass off this staff to him. And you have to maintain that fool. Means it's going to be like a prime object in your kingdom. The king was thinking, it's such a strange request, this kind of fool. So actually he sends out his soldiers and tries to find a fool. So it's very funny. It was actually a drama that I watched, so I can't really describe the whole scenes and everything. There were a lot of jokers and everyone. Who doesn't want a gold staff and the king maintaining you all his life? So a lot of people try to prove themselves foolish. The king was not convinced. It was actually another person, when he was walking, I don't remember, the soldiers were saying that he was trying to count stars when it was daytime. Something like that, so that's how they caught him, trying to say that he's a fool. And he got him to the king, and the king was convinced with his foolery. So he gave him the golden staff, saying that you can pass it on when you find someone more foolish than you are. And like that, so he said, chalo, I've done it for the saint. Mera kaam khatam ho gaya. It's such a weird charity, it is fine, saints are anyways weird. So then he was passing his life like that. And then one day he realized that he has a very deadly disease and he has very less time left. And then he realizes that what do I do, So everyone is coming to meet him, giving their condolences and talking to him nicely, sweetly. And the queen also doesn't know what to do. She's crying and wailing. The children are wailing. And then this fool, he comes to meet the king and he tells him ki, Arey, aap... And he tried to inquire from the soldiers around what is happening, what has happened to the king. And the soldiers didn't know what to tell this fool. They just said, nahi, abhi, king to abhi jane wale hai. So now this guy didn't understand what it means. So he went and told the king, I heard that you're going somewhere. The king was like, no, to tell this guy. He said, yeah, I'm going on a long trip. So the king said, really? This fool said, wow, that's nice. Can I come with you? And the king said, no, the place where I'm going, no one can come with me. He said, really? What about your wives, your children? You're so attached to them. There's so much affection between you all and so much time you all have spent together. What about that? He said, no, I can't take them. He said, Arey? He said, what about your luggage? Where's your luggage? They're not taking anything? He said, no, I can't take anything. He said, not even your crown? You used to always... so proud about it, your silken robes, कुछ तो अच्छे कपड़े पहन के जाओ. He said, नहीं, इसमें ऐसे ही, you just have to go. He's just getting ahead. He just wants to, do away with him. He was thinking, this is really sad. You can't take anything with you. Your loved ones cannot come with you. Very sad trip, no? And the king was saying, yeah, it's a sad trip. He said, Acha, did you know that you'll have to go for this trip? And he said, yeah, I knew it. Like one fine day, everyone has to make this trip. So what does this fool do? He takes his staff and he gives it to the king. The king is offended. He said, what do you mean? You have to pass this staff on to someone who's a bigger fool. He said, whether you knew that you have to go for this trip, but still you spend so much time on these things and you spend so much time on your money and fooling around. just wasting your time. I've never seen a bigger fool than you. And knowing that you have to go, and still spending so much time, energy, money on all these worldly things. There's no bigger fool than you. I feel this, you're worthy of this. So that point of time, the saint comes out and he tells him that this person, this fool, is actually my disciple. And I sent him to you to give you, some sense that you have to realize. So here, at this point of time, Arjun wants to know that after materially anyway I'm dead, spiritually also if I'm not perfect, do I become like that king? If not here and not there, lost. So that's what he wanted to know. That what about, is there, like how there's material evolution in species, is there any spiritual evolution? Does it happen? Can I continue further? So at this point of time I'll stop, since we can start this section next time, 37th verse onwards. Is that okay? We'll chant one small round because we have 5 minutes left. This 27 beats. You can pass it behind.
Oh, even I used also.
Take it from Kavita.
Kavita, can I just take your notes, please?
You can pass it behind, Shazam.